Hello everyone, welcome to this channel. My name is Zachary and I want to thank you for joining on this video. Before I move on and start talking about the Ni Tmuwak Institute and my terminal project, I wanted to give my thanks to the amazing people, the faculty, the professors, and all of those people at University of Oregon for allowing me to pursue my creative process and design to the fullest as it has been for my terminal process. For this video, I'm going to be going over the Ni Tmuwak Institute, which was my terminal studio project at University of Oregon that took over 2 terms, and it has been a really fun project of exploring collaborative communities and as a way of interacting with the indigenous communities here in the Willamette Valley and how we can be able to employ the strategies of working with these folks and add their history, their culture, their environment, their way of life into these buildings and the land, and for them to be able to speak for themselves instead of just having a structure that we see traditionally to be so separated and isolated, as we can see in the suburban and all over around the world. To get started on this, I have the site currently located hypothetically on Moss Street and East 15th Street, which is on campus at the University of Oregon and is currently next to GSH, the Global Scholars Hall, Calipari Hilly, and where the current Neely Institute, the Northwest Bright Language Institute, where Robert Elliott is the director of the place, and he's the one that allowed this kind of opportunity alongside with Malu, my terminal studio instructor. And this site, as is, it was supposed to be a focus on revitalizing the language of the indigenous communities. And one way that we had to think about was to either renovate or demolish the pre-existing buildings such as the Neely Institute and the Elder House, as well as adding onto that speculative design of the parking lot that is currently situated between the alley and Moss Street. And some more additional context to this whole site, which I'll be able to provide up here with the map, is that to the north there's the river, and that does tie a lot more to the project because of Ni Tmuwak, which means the salmon, and the Calipari language. And then other than that, there are essentially 4 different native claws of the area. So you have the Museum of Natural and Cultural History, you have the Immediate Nations Longhouse, you have the Calipari Hilly Dorm, and you have the Neely House and Institute. So these 4 kind of tied into the cultural, the historical, and the environment of what our project and design could become. As for the starting of it, this is the kind of a site map of my own design, where I have models where I'll be showing it to you guys throughout the whole video. It is the Salmon Institute, and I really wanted to have it kind of tied to the history, to the culture, to the environment of indigenous communities, and make them feel like they're a lot more immersed and protected within the space. And that essentially comes with the idea of the Tmuwak, the salmons moving the land, transmitting knowledge and wisdom for the next generation to thrive. For the question that you guys may be asking about why salmon, salmon have deep ties to the indigenous communities here in Willamette and abroad. They have a connection to the circle of life, rebirth, celebration, respect, and stewardship around these kind of salmon. There's a lot of people in the communities here are essentially like trying to revive the culture of the salmon before it starts disappearing, because it's going to cause a lot of harm to the ecosystems. And the resurgence of these habits and community effort creates this kind of exact honor that I'm trying to portray through my models. And the Salmon Institute has essentially 4 different focuses on why and how I kind of created this story, and models. With education and immersion, there's connection to the land and transition of spaces. For these four, it focuses on the idea of revitalizing the language through means of immersing yourself into the environment, which essentially means that you have teaching moments throughout the pathways, throughout the vegetation, landscaping, walls of structures, as well as interior and around the space. And then for the connecting the land, transition of spaces, and the other stuff in the lower right is the intensity of how the diversity program can be for people that are going to be walking through the space. And this brings to the ethos that I have for the project, as well as kind of like my general idea for going to the future. And one of my strongest points in this project was spatial relationship. I did really want to create this opportunity for communities to collaborate, to interact, and become the most important part of design. And that meant that with the spatial relationship, the transition and connection in each space become a lot more crucial, and that becomes more of a desire to create intention behind materials, behind the history behind pathways, such as cardinal direction, such as the four direction of gardening, and any other areas that may allow these kind of opportunities to intersect with indigenous communities and people that are walking through it every day. And the idea of this kind of integrative design into our surrounding does hopefully reflect these kind of cultures and these beliefs that Native Americans have had since they have long lived in harmony with nature, with the juxtaposition that now traditional infrastructure is very isolating from landscaping. By blending these culture and nature into design, architecture can feel a lot more connected and within the world and around all of us. And this is another like a little sneak peek of what it looks like from a perspective. And the south part, which is by map, is in the south. And this is the Moss Children Center for daycare and kind of facilities for folks that is connected to University of Oregon. So we, in planning through this whole entire design, had to include some kind of childcare, daycare kind of setting, because the Moss Care does not connect with Ni Tmuwak Institute and or elders for people that are visiting this place. In the early stages of design, I kind of focused on a few things. I focused on courtyards as my initial process on how to connect with everyone and introduce some of the opportunities for cardinal direction, for multiple uses of pathways and transition of spaces. I've also explored the idea of using longhouses and thinking about how can we break that down and make it a lot more modern and have a take on connecting to the cultural roots of indigenous communities here. And then lastly, it kind of evolved from there into fishes, as you kind of see in these images. And so to kind of really show that, I have these models that I provided, and in here, this is kind of what it looks like right now. And then so here in the courtyard, I had things that this is going north up. So anything from east to west is kind of traditionally is more of a sacred space when you're entering the longhouse. As the sun rises and the sun sets, you want to be able to go in that kind of same direction to represent the circle of life and the beginning, the ending, and so forth in Native American history. And so kind of had that idea in here with a lot of trees on the outside and the inside, which then could mean that the structure can become more of a donut shape. But this didn't really pan out as I felt like this was too on the nose for what I wanted to go in terms of my design. Now, for this one, I kind of focused on the idea of redesign and like adaptive reuse for the structure, because it's currently existing where the Neely's here and the elder house is over here, which therefore means that if we were to reuse this design, how can we improve it in such a way that makes it where there's a lot more connection. This did not really pan out because of the speculative addition that needed. So for this one, this is the where the longhouse, where you imagine the slope, the roofing to kind of mimic the Mini Nations longhouse that is already over site. And this roofing, where originally was the rectangle, this got cut into this little fencing area here, and that meant that this can provide some kind of protection for the elder house while also allowing the opportunity for the elders to go from east to west if they want to have these spaces to be a lot more sacred. And that's the same case for the Ni Institute, where you can try to have that similar notion. Now, this is the only kind of fish I have saved up, where this is the kind of the idea that was one of my final designs in terms of conceptual model that led to my final project. But this one, I had the mouth of the fish to be a lot more thicker to kind of represent the salmon, like the coho, Ni Tmuwak, and chum, which are the three types of salmon that I've used. You have the fins, you have areas and that kind of represent like different materials and different opportunities for interaction with the structure itself. And then these were some of the process that I started, where I started thinking about the transition of spaces, which therefore means that from left to right, from south to north, this is kind of where you're looking for, or north to the right. I had heavier, denser vegetation to the left to kind of help mimic the structure of the building that the Neely is currently going to be, while on the right it's become a lot more dispersed to allow this kind of hierarchy of landscaping and diverse opportunities for teaching. And then here is where we have these three clay models that I kind of mocked up the fishes and how they can represent in scale as well as proportionality to the whole site. Where on the left, we have a lot of these dense trees and vegetation, right? That kind of is very dense and very heavy, which means that we need something on the right to kind of balance that out. And so that's kind of what led to what I have in design for today. And as we scale back up, I started thinking about landscaping as a whole, where I integrated tree canopy, perennials, and flowers in such a dynamic way of responding to the structures of the land, which therefore means that there can be different hierarchies of transition spaces of interaction, as well as opportunities for harvesting and maintenance for indigenous folks or the people that are going to be taking classes around here. And I wanted each of these spaces to be overlap and create a sense of harmony while transitioning from open woodland to prairie grassland. Because overall, this whole landscaping design is more of a take on oak savanna biome, where we're removing all of the evergreen, like the Douglas fir and stuff, because that has been encroaching onto the land as the history has been stated. And this idea helped foster opportunities for a diverse learning experience in language and environment, to be able to harvest like chemists, to dye from Oregon grapes, food from trees, and enjoy the native land that it once was. And as for here, this is like a lot more kind of a basic idea of what's going on in my current site plan, as well as what is going on in terms of color and the gradients for each of the areas. For the red is representing the emerging canopy, and that kind of does blend in with the replacement of Douglas fir for root trees and any kind of taller trees like alders. And then there's understory, which is pink, which kind of means like birches and stuff that kind of transition where you can just walk through quite easily. And then from there you have shrubs and brambles that will act as privacy, vegetation, entrance, and opportunities for harvesting and from different gradients from light to dark. And then for the green is a typical grass, but I wanted to do something more native, like prairie grasses and wildflowers. That way we can do a lot more low zones and low maintenance for a lot of people to interact, and allow for opportunities on education to people be like, hey, you don't really need to be mowing all that much, because the amount of mowing that you do will actually reduce the amount of perennials and diversity into your culture, into your land, that become more of a monoculture. And lastly, if the water and or pond area, because of the biosphere that currently exists in the lower right corner of this whole site, all the water essentially flows to that. So I felt like it was nice to kind of really take it more of a dive through that kind of process and allow it for a bigger opportunity for understanding on how to do some river maintenance and cleanup and teaching moments for any people that needs to come over here, get this experience, and be able to come back home and kind of start on this project. Now, initially there's only 6 trees, different kinds: persimmon, bell alders, Oregon white oak, Oregon ash, black walnut, and white birch. These are just only the initial ideas for what kind of trees could be on site. I wanted to create the intention that it could be a food forest for people that would want to be using this all year round, where we can think about plants that can be harvested in the spring, in the summer, fall, and winter. And this whole overall landscape design had a few connections through water, where you have whirlpools and flowing to make it where it's going around the salmon, to kind of lead them in more of an organic flow to the river that is currently going to the north. And as well as the effigy mound, that is one that I kind of take more present on in Ohio, where instead of the mounds and stuff, which can still be very helpful and very fun to work with, I thought instead of doing mounds, why not just do a lot more landscaping, where you can create a sense of a hierarchy and a sense of flow, and make it where it can be water, it can be pattern, it can be movement, where it will draw people into the site and make them a lot more curious about what's going on than just around the borders, than just creating mounds of earth and only treating it as grass. Going back in for the initial talk, when I was talking about circle and this diagram, it helps show a visual of what's going on with these circles. Circles do represent circle of life, celebration, ritual, and connection, because it's kind of similar to an infinity, as well as a lot of importance in Native Americans' history. And so for each of these circles, I created them as more of a gathering environment for anyone from the Ni Tmuwak Institute, the Elder How, the Coho, the Tmuwak, the Chum. They all have their own circles to represent what's going on in their own structures, as well as any gathering spaces outside and inside these spaces. And you can see there's a little bit of a basic understanding for what's going on in terms of circulation, where everything can bleed in from the north, from the east or west, east to west, and have them trickle in or trickle out and flow in and out, where you don't feel like you have to be going all the way around or into one from one area, as well as going through in the middle to kind of mimic the river. And for these design strategies that I had down on the site was with the Ni Institute and the Elder on the left, I focused on monocrystalline solar panels, or solar panels that will collect solar and energy for the Ni to use in case things go bad, and help be able to redirect that to whatever is needed the most, as well as passive lighting and ventilation that is currently in the blue, where you can use a lot more manual control for skylights in the summer whenever things get too hot, as well as in the winter to trap more heat for whenever it gets too cold, as well as provide a lot more nice natural lighting, which is typically traditionally used in trees, well, not trees, and homes and structures and stuff back then when you didn't have a lot of lighting, and I thought that this can connect more with the natural world. And as for the light green arrow, these are going to be stormwater management, where the reef salmon don't really have any kind of water catchment. They're all drained because of the way the structure is going to work, which you can kind of see here, where the structure, there's no water catchment here because it's kind of a little bit more of an engineering trial and error, where if you're to provide something, then there's potential for more leakage and more issues down the road. So I decided to kind of eliminate that and have it where it was slide a lot more easily and slope in with gravel and other stuff underneath to help with drainage as easy as it can be. And then lastly, for kind of the overall pathway that's going on throughout the entire site, instead of only using gravel or concrete and stuff, I thought about using more like ADA friendly, which led me to more using bricks, as well as mosaic and designs and patterns, where you can invite a lot more language and culture for everyone that is going to be using these spaces, as well as exploring and are curious about what's happening around here. Now, this is a lot more further exploration to what's going on in terms of passive and active system. I have used the heating or radiant flooring on the ground floor, as well as the upper floor for the chum and the Ni Tmuwak. And I've also introduced a mini split system that utilizes a lot more energy recovery ventilator system, so you can minimize the amount of energy that's going to be needed and increase the passive strategies that are going to be incorporated in the design. This, in addition to trees, can be able to help a lot with shading and protection in the winter as well as in the summer. And then starting now, this is going to be the focus on the fishes and how I would be designing them. To reiterate, as we told about the circles and what they represent, and each of these fishes, they all have essentially the same function. For me, all three of these fishes have exhibition of some kind. That way they can be able to relate to their own theme, to their own function for each of these spaces. But in essence, they are becoming more of a large gathering spaces or interactions for each of these sites. I could bring this out, but I'm going to show you a little bit more from here. Now, I did a lot more process thinking about whenever we were going through these models and like, okay, what does the fin on the top represent? They can represent skylight. Do we want them to be protruded outward, or do we want them inward? Do we want them to be with collar? Do we not want them to be with collar? What does the mouth material be like? What does the fin back be like? What are the flippers? What are going to be all of the functions and features that each part of the body of the fish can be? So I was exploring a little bit more of that, and then I got into the idea of what kind of materials to use. And for the fishes, I kind of used like three main ideas. I thought about using local clay that is found in the Pacific Northwest. There is quite a variety, up to 6 different kinds of clay, as well as using the glazing opportunities that you can use in gas, electric, or wood, and any other traditional processes for glazing these kind of clay, and to help mimic the idea of what these clay scales can be for fishes, and to reflect light, to really enhance the atmosphere of what the site can be. And then for the third idea, I was taking a precedent from Stephen Hall and Yanis Chapel, where they use a lot of natural lighting to brighten up the space and create that really nice, deep, moody, and intense atmosphere, as well as providing colors and opportunities for the fishes, as well as anywhere else on the site, as an atmosphere, as the opportunity for using non-traditional methods and just have fun, really. I didn't want to really go for something white, off-white, or any kind of those kind of simple gradient. I wanted to create color to kind of relate to the culture, to make it where you can have fun. It's all about connecting with people. It's all about making life full of color and full of expression than just more monotone as our culture kind of starts leading towards that way. And then this is a little bit of an idea of what's going on for the salmon enclosure detail, which I also have this and I can show it out for you guys. And in here, what's happening is that in my kind of modular design and my own idea, all of these are 6 feet high until there's a bracing that connects them. There's just another network part here that also is very consistent, the same exact dimensions for all of the fish, the salmon. The only difference of what's going on is the length from the edge of the curve to the middle of the point. These will change and shift depending on what's going on in the site. So for this one, as you can see here, it's cut wide at the very base and quite skinny in here, which therefore means that the shape of it is going to be very different. The height is going to be taller here in the middle, and it's going to be the widest in the base. And I decided to kind of create that intention to make it where it felt like it was more of a fish using a skeletal structure system that for me, it also does relate to canoes. As we can see here, I'll also be showing up down there, but essentially for the top of the fish model, this is what it's going to look like with the glazing and the shading devices and protections and all that stuff. But once we take that out, the cars run away. Cars run flying. Okay, so what's going on here is that this is more like a canoe structure where we have the entrances going in from here, and then you also have another entrance or exit potentially, as well as 3 ways and a few ways in going from east to west. And this to help kind of tie in with the indigenous ideas. If they want to go this way, they totally can, and there's no issues about it. But this is going to be for the Ni Tmuwak salmon. This is quite the similar design to what's going on for the coho salmon. The only difference is that there's not going to be 3 doors leading out into the grand courtyard area that connects to the other fishes. And now in the kind of plan, as what I have iterated in the coho and the Ni Tmuwak, each of these have a central plumbing, electrical, and other mechanical devices in the center of the fishes. That way it can be a lot more symmetrical on both sides, as well as providing bathrooms to make it easy of access for plumbing. And then you will also have storage, mechanicals, and stuff at one of the end. The other end is typically open, and that will mean that's more of an entrance. It's more of an open space. Such as in the Ni Tmuwak, you have dining and kitchen area, as well as the gallery that's more in the central. As for the coho, you do have more of an auditorium and exhibition, as well as libraries and classroom. For the coho, this is supposed to help represent more of a children learning environment, while the Ni Tmuwak is supposed to represent more of a connection, more of a gathering space, more of a cafeteria, and areas for events such as weddings and other big family gatherings or community events. And then the chum kind of ties a little bit of both the Ni Tmuwak and the coho in terms of what their function, but it is more of the initial impression for anyone that's going to be coming onto East 15th Street and Moss and seeing this huge fish and be like, what is this? It is becoming more of a reception a play, an auditorium, and workshop. This will allow for this kind of open work environment for people to come in and interact and get to know more about this place. There's also a lobby, an info reception desk for anyone that becomes a lot more curious along the street, because that street on East 15th Street has unbanked Hayward Field and other dorms and stuff, as well as more of a direct pathway to the Eugene Pioneer Cemetery and to Hendricks Park and all of those other areas. And in the Tmuwak, this is kind of a similar idea of what's going on in terms of passive and active strategy. The only difference in this kind of image is that the hallways are also different. So for each fish, there's also going to be different kind of colors or different ideas. And the Tmuwak, I did put it in as a neon green. It doesn't have to be that. It can be something like murals. It can be something that will entice people to want to view it and see what's going on. So you can use indigenous communities' artworks and invite them in and have their art be displayed here for long term, or even have an idea for using colors and other strategies to create an atmosphere and the design. Now for this one, this is one of my models that I have designed where I use more of a maroon color. That way, when you're walking through the hallway, you can have an atmosphere that will make you be a lot more cozy, a lot more interested. It can tell a certain story about each fish, especially when you're thinking about these three kind of fishes. They all come from different areas. So you have the Tmuwak, the coho, and the sham. The coho is the one that is more closely to the forest, which is why it's also more closely to the foresty area of the site. The Tmuwak is the one that comes in the spring and fall, which means that they kind of go both ways. They eventually reach to the end of the estuaries into the ocean. Also, they will come back. As for the sham, they're not really regionally in Willamette Valley's rivers, but they're more closer to the ocean front, which is why they're a lot closer to the river and to the north. Now, for the Ni Institute and the Elder House, this design was a little bit different. Instead of going back to my original design on the courtyard, there's still some mimicry and similarities to what's going on here. I had to think about radial design and make it a lot more distinctive in terms of structure, in terms of interaction and opportunity. And so as we know, like what's going on in the fishes and stuff, they have this wonderful curve, they have this wonderful height, as well as the way that it was designed. As for the Tmuwak, the Ni Institute, it's a little bit different design. And the reason for that is that way I can be able to create a distinction between the two. I wanted the Ni to act as a hub for the salmon to be able to get their education, get to learn, to get to grow from little fishes to mothers of nature, and be able to have them be able to go out into their journey. But that's that kind of symbolism, that kind of idea where the Ni Institute acts the hub for the three salmon for them to lead into the river. And with this distinction, I created a radial design and the Elder House, that way it can kind of mimic into the Ni Institute. And with this kind of design, this is only one of the initial processes where I thought about east to west, as well as what can we connect into the central courtyard in terms of functions, in terms of privacy and public areas for anyone that is going to be coming through here. And then going back to like what we talked about for the fishes and the three main ideas, for these three main ideas, I focused on the mosaics and the pathways for language, for artworks, for kind of exploring the idea of what we're learning here at the Ni and the Elder. Like, do we want to learn about the language? Do we want to learn about the history, about how plants are made, about the fishes and they're growing, or is it a pond of like art and knowledge and wisdom for people to really know? This is one of the main ideas. For the second one, I use board-on-board methods, where I I had thought about like, what do I want to do for mimicking and be a lot more immersed within the landscape. As we know, with the Neely and the Elder, they're already provided by a lot of dense trees and vegetation. I kind of want to make it where you have this kind of more direct connection to nature and be a lot more immersed, where you don't feel like it's necessarily left out of place and a lot more isolated as it is for like GSH and other buildings that are in the area. And then for the third thing, I was thinking about using a specific wood technique where you can have charred black wood or something kind of like a similar function where I saw black and kind of soaking heat for in the wintertime, but also allow quite a really intense, nice atmosphere when you have very steep roofing. As is seen on here, where when it's black, it tells a story where you don't really notice it until water is running off of it, and you have this depth to be able to create this like all wall of rain that happens sometimes in Eugene, Oregon. And this is the site where I have the salmon. So in the center here, where the entrance is here, this is the Moss Street, and we're pointing to north here. This site is in this area is the Neely Institute. So you're kind of connecting it and imagine that this is the mirror of this way. You have multiple entrances into this site, and it is quite a very similar area to what's going on for the Elder. The main difference is that for the Elder, it has the same roof slope from the interior and the exterior. The Neely is the only one that's very different to be able to accommodate the second floor. And then also an additional thing to think about, but this is what's happening during the day. Well, what does happen in the night? You can have celebrations, you can have events that will connect both the Neely and the Elder together and that have that kind of harmony, that kind of idea that be able to share knowledge and be able to entrust wisdom to other folks and or students that are currently learning and residing at the Neely Institute. And the plan that I have is very similar to what's going on in terms of my concept with the radial design. The only difference is that I did provide 4 bedrooms for residents, such as a previous resident that was originally in the house that we now refer to as the Elder House. Virginia Beaver, she was someone that was highly respected within the Neely Institute as well as the University of Oregon and the Native community in the area. She was living in that place for about 15 years and helped revitalize her culture and her language at her time here at the University of Oregon. But with this Elder House, it's with that idea of people can be there for up to years. I kind of wanted to provide opportunities for any residents to come in, settle in these areas and come out and go whenever they need to, especially for elders that are wanting to teach, to leave their knowledge and be able to allow folks to be able to explore and interact. And in each of these bedrooms there is an individual bathroom because not all elders are going to be the same. Some may want more privacy, some may want more sense of home and sense of environment where they're going to be all of a sudden into a new place. However, there is a lot more of a central area for kitchen, dining, living, and library where all these 4 people or potentially more can interact, as well as have that kind of floor plan being mirrored on the opposite end for the Neely, where you have this sense of home. Even though it is an institution, their goal is to have it where they want to have it be a lot more traditional, comfortable, and a lot more easygoing for anyone that's going to be coming into the Institute. So on the left side, where we have the Neely, you have multiple offices around, quite a few offices. On the ground floor, you have about 6-7 offices. They have meeting rooms and stuff. But the main idea for these offices is to be able to interact with the lobbies, reception areas, meeting rooms, and become a lot more public place. While on the upper floor is for the Ni Institute, you do have some offices, but you also have open meeting rooms as well as classrooms where it becomes a lot more private, becomes a lot more protected for anyone that needs a lot more private times to work and or some kind of isolation from like privacy from the people that are being below or even just walking on the street. And then this one with the sections of it, you can see what's going on in the design. For here, you can see that the interior for the Ni Institute, where you have a slope of the roof, this roof on the inner side, it's the same exact thing for the elder, while the second floor is obviously different. So whenever we flip it, imagine this being shipped down and then lying here. This is what's happening for the elder house, where I kind of want to have a sense of scale to kind of like be a lot more symmetrical in terms of design and make it easier for modular building and construction. And this is what I showed you for the models earlier, for like with the entrances as well as signage and how that works for not only the Ni but also for the other fishes. And then for the hallways and between each of the structures, I thought about murals and design that could potentially enhance the history and the culture of the place instead of just having it be all white wall. Why not make it also a lot more interesting for people when they're walking through? And then lastly, these are just some quick ideas for fire accessibility. These don't have any additional information, and this is a lot more basic for anyone that may want to take a look at them and understand them themselves. Now, these are models. I will also show some videos of what they are independently, but in essence, these are kind of the models that I was using throughout the entire project. Well, thank you for being here with me. It is quite a long video, but I hope you guys enjoyed it as much as I have. And if you guys have any questions, comments, concern about these models, or even just suggestions for what I could be doing in the future, let me know and just put them in the comments. I would love to see what you guys think about this project as well as this video. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoy your mornings, your lunches, your evenings, or however you guys enjoy it. I'll see you guys next time.